This video is made for the advanced static pose. This is for the students who have already gone through the static pose video, so you already know and understand the layouts and the basics of the static pose before you move on to this advanced video. As well, you should have already gone through the arms and legs practice video. So here's what we worked on together during the static pose, and then your homework was to do 2 more views of a static pose. And for the people who are choosing to do the advanced version, you can save the last pose here on page 6 for your advanced pose. If you're following this video and you do not have the handouts, it's okay. I'll give you a brief rundown on how to do the layout to get ready to do the 10 heads static pose figure. The tools that you'll be needing for this video will be page 6 from your handout, or you can use a blank piece of legal size paper. So this is 8.5 by 14 inches. You're also going to want to have a number 2 pencil or HB, as well as a 1H pencil or a mechanical pencil. Woo! If you prefer mechanical pencils. And then you'll want to have a detail eraser, as well as your regular plastic eraser, and of course a pencil sharpener and a clear ruler. For me personally, I don't like mechanical pencils because I always keep breaking the leads, and I think they're just too sharp on the paper because when you come back and erase, it seems like they'll push little indents into your paper. So I won't be using mine, but whenever you see me using my 1H pencil, if you like mechanical pencils, you can use yours at the same time. And then we're going to use the number 2 pencil for when it's time to start darkening in the skin and doing some finishing details. For doing this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw and talk at the same time. So if it starts moving along a little bit too fast for you, just hit pause wherever you want. You can rewind wherever you want to get caught up. But since this is the advanced version, I'm going to go ahead and just move through this more quickly. All right, let's get started. During this video, if your plan is you're only going to draw one girl, you can go ahead and start by putting a line right down the center of the page. If you want to use your paper where you can draw 2 girls side by side, what I've done here is if you were to come in 2.5 inches from the edge to draw one line, that'll be one girl, and then 2.5 inches in from the other line, that'll be the center of the other girl. For finding her head, come down 3/4 of an inch from the top of the page and draw a line for the top of her skull. And then come down and her head will be 1 inch and 1/4 for the bottom of her chin. The width of her head, the total will be 3/4, so you can do 3/8 on one side, 3/8 on the other side. Now that we have one head established, what we could do is we can come and measure from the top of her head to the bottom of her chin, and we can get 2 heads down, 3 heads down. Go ahead and square these out and make sure you're nice and square and parallel. Now we have 3 heads down. If you want to label these 1, 2, and 3 so we don't get lost where we're at. Let's go ahead and grab 3 heads and then move this down here so we can find 6. Come down to 6, and again 3 heads down is 9. Draw a line down here at 9, but just leave the dot for 6. The next thing we're going to want is we're going to want to know where 4 is, and we're going to want to know where the floor is. So come in and grab 1 head between 2 and 3, go down to 4, and also come down here from 9 and go down to the floor. Square out a line for the floor and square out a line here for 4. and you can label this 4, label this 9 and 10. The next measurements we want to get are the half measurements. The first one is going to be here at the shoulders, 1.5. The next one is going to be 3.5. And the last one is going to be 6.5. So go ahead and take your 3.5 and just drop right down to 6 and get your half. Now here at 6.5, let's go ahead and get our lines all the way across. And that's going to be her knees. Come back to the halfway point between 3 and 4. And also halfway between 1 and 2. The next set of lines that we're going to need are the quarters. So we need 2.25, 3.25, and 4.25, and down here at 9.25. Since we already have 3.5, it's easy for us to find the quarter in between this. So come down in between 3 and 3.5, and you can find your 3.25. And then we can use this 3.25 to come up and find 2.25, 4.25, and all the way down here to 9.25. And then let's go ahead and double check these together. So we have one head. We're coming down to the shoulders at 1.5. 2, 2.25, that's the apex of the bust. 3 is the bottom of the rib cage. 3.25 is the top of hip bone. 3.5 high hip. Down to 4 full hip. 4.25 is her crotch level. Then we have her knees, 6.5, as well as 9 is the top of the ankle as well as the inside ankles. 9.25 is the outside ankles. The next thing we want to get is the width. So the width of her shoulders, waist, hips. So the first thing we'll have to do is we'll have to come and divide up the face so we can find these widths. Let's go ahead and do this together now. So come down and find the halfway point on the face. And I'm going to switch to my lighter pencil. And get this line going off to her right side. Let's come down and get the next level. So going in between the two of these, split that in half. Get your line coming off to this side. And that'll be halfway, 3/4. And the last one we need is in between these two. So this is tip of the nose to the bottom of the lip. Draw your line going this way. And now what we'll have, so again we have the eye line, tip of the nose, bottom of the bottom lip, and then we have half of a hand here, or half of a head here, 3/4 of a head here, and of course we have our 3/8 of a head there. So now let's go ahead and find her widths. The two widest points are at the shoulder and the full hip, and it's 1.5 total. And we know if we measure half of it, we'll get our 3/4. So come in here, get your 3/4 of a head, and come back down to the shoulders at 1.5. You can get 3/4 there. Come all the way down to 4 for the full hip. And then I'm going to flip this over, and I'm going to keep measuring here again at 4, and I'll come back up to the shoulders. Now I want to double check these, so I'm going to get 1.5 heads total. So this is top of the skull to her shoulders, and I'm double checking that yes, that's 1.5 heads, yes, that's 1.5 heads. And I'm noticing on my full hip, I'm just a little bit off, so I'm just going to make them like 1 pencil thickness wider. The next one is going to be down at the high hip, so this will be 3.5. And it should be 1 head total, So we want half of that, so let's come up here and grab half of a head. And then down here at 3.5, we can get half of a head going this way, half of a head going this way. And then I just want to double check, is it one head exactly? So I can measure from 3 to 4, double check that, and we're good to go. The last one is here at the bottom of the rib cage and the top of the hip bones. This is going to be 3/4 total, so we want 3/8 and 3/8 on both sides. This is that 3/8 right here. So this is from the eye line to the bottom of her bottom lip. And then I just want to double check it, so I'll come over here and I'll get 3/4. And I'll double check the total. Now I'm a little bit short, so I'll just add a titch more to each one by making a darker mark. And then just double check yours. Does it make this hourglass shape? If so, you probably did it correctly. Let's go ahead and lightly connect these up. So when you're doing the rib cage, bow it outwards lightly, connecting back up to the shoulder. So it's a slight outside curve. Down here at the hips, let's just get the curve started. You're just connecting the dots. Again, I'm doing this really lightly with my 1H pencil. And then here in the waist, you'll curve upwards. You're curving inwards. Now that we know where the heads are and everything, I'm going to go ahead and start erasing these numbers that I put in here. Up here at the armhole, let's go ahead and get her armhole circles. So remember, the oval is following the same Y shape that her shoulders are doing. Half of it's to the inside, half of it's to the outside. And then let's go ahead and get her trapezius muscles. So again, from the chin heading towards the shoulders, halfway, this is where the shoulder trapezius muscle will aim for that. And then down here, let's go ahead and put her bottom of her swimsuit in. So again, this was 4, her total full hip, and just below it, 4 1/4 is the bottom of her crotch level. And remember that the swimsuit front view is very small on the opening here. If you make it too wide, again, it's going to look like you're drawing a back view, so be careful. So come in here and draw an equal amount on both sides. And then you want to curve up somewhere in between 4 and 3.5. So let's just go ahead and do exactly in the middle of those two. And then you can do the bottom of the swimsuit edge, curving up towards that. Again, making sure it's an equal distance right here and here. Now that we're finished getting all of her widths, we no longer need these certain marks here on the face. So let's go ahead and start drawing her face in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to erase these lines. But I'm keeping the marks here on her face because we still need those. I want to get her eye line all the way across. And then I'm going to start dividing this up. So you're getting her pupils, inside tear duct, outside corners of her eyes. The height of her eye is half of the width. So now I sharpen my number 2 pencil. So the next thing I need to do is I need to find the center of her mouth. So in between the tip of her nose and the bottom of the bottom lip, center of the mouth. And I'll put a short line in here. I'll come back to the corner of her eye down to her chin to find out how wide is that mouth. And then I want to erase all this other extra stuff. Now I'm coming down to find the width of her chin, which is half the width of the mouth. Same thing on the nose. So half the width of the mouth is going to be the nostrils. Now the center of her mouth, we want to go all the way out to the edges so we could find where her jawbone is going to be at. So you're going to connect from the chin to the jaw and over to the temple. The next thing we're going to want is her hairline. So again, from the center of the eyes, halfway to the top of the head. This is her forehead, and again, halfway from there to the top of the skull, this is her hairline. So go ahead and put a guide in here for her hairline, and then let's aim for that. And then remember, going from the hairline to the top of the skull, you want that same distance repeated. And this will be the top of her hairstyle. Then the hairstyle on the sides of her face, remember it's one eye away from her face. So come in here, find the width of an eye, move it away that same distance. That's about how far her hair will hang off the side of her face. On my girl, the top of her head is looking a little bit pointy, so I'm going to go ahead and just fix these curves real quick. That's good enough. And then let's add some ears in here so we can get a sense of the sides of her face. Remember, you always start by going up and out, and then you come down and end it just above the tip of her nose. The last thing we want to establish is the neck. If you remember, the neck lines up with the outside of her iris. So come in and find the outside of her iris. This would be her neck. And it'll go from the jawline down to the shoulder. And then down in this neck area, you can make a little oval heading up towards where the trapezius muscle is hitting. And now we can turn this into what looks like a dress form. So far we've drawn in the levels, the widths, we've just got the basics of the shape of her body, and then we went ahead and we finished the face along with having the hairstyle guidelines. What I like to do at this point now is I want to establish her legs first, and then I'll do her arms last. As you recall, this girl is going to be standing with her weight even on both feet. And what we're going to do in this pose is we're going to have her ankles the same distance from the center line, her knees the same distance from the center line. In order to make this pose a little more cutesy and feminine, what I'm doing is I'm bringing the ankles as close together as I can. What limits how close the ankles will get is the shoe down in this area. So what I like to do at this point is just figure out where that shoe is going to be, then I can establish my ankles, my knees, and start to draw the legs. So down here is going to be where each shoe is almost touching each other. So I'm going to go ahead and get my guidelines for drawing the shoes. The basic wedge shapes. And then I'll know that my ankles will be right above that. Now that I have my ankles in place, I kind of have an idea now what I'm aiming for with her legs. At this point, I'll take my lighter pencil and I'm going to connect the ankle right back up here to the full hip. And this is going to be a light outside curve. And let's get the other side as well. And whenever you're traveling a really long distance, sometimes I'll do the motion with my hand first before I even draw. And then as I'm continuing the motion, I'll start to plot out where that line's going. And you can see here, you do not want to keep cutting out, 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 out. As soon as you get to her full hip, we're cutting back towards her ankles. In this pose, what I've done here is to also make it kind of cutesy. If her knees are a little bit close together, that'll add to the effect of how she looks. So what I've done is I just have the ankles and the knees are the same closeness to the center. So if you want, you can take a ruler and you can just find the center of the ankle squared up with the plumb line and come find the center of the knee. And again, the knee is bigger than the ankle. For me to connect these legs together, I always like to know where the bottom of the swimsuit is so I can start to draw the inside of each of her upper legs. And now I know the width of that leg. And remember, we're going to do this as the top of the top of the cylinder. And down here at the knee is the bottom of the cylinder. And you're aiming, again, this is the width of the leg, dividing that in half, and aiming for the center of the knee. So right here at the crotch level, which is 4 1/4, we're doing the top of the cylinder, we're dividing it in half, we're aiming for the center of the knee. And this lets us know the angles of our cylinders. So this cylinder is heading that way, this one's heading that way. I also want to make her knees a little bit smaller and cuter, and I'm making her legs even more slim than what we did on the first set of croquis. So when we were doing these based on the professional swimmer athlete, she kind of had more muscular legs. Now we're doing these thinner, daintier legs. So basically whatever I decide on one leg, at that point now I want to do the same thing on this leg. And then I'll come in here and I'll get her inside sweetheart shape. And the outside plain heart shape, and it's going to come here to the full hip. So I'm just checking to make sure that both legs are even. The next thing we want to do is we want to head down for the ankles. So let's take the center of the knee, straight line to the center of the ankle. So that's the bone inside of her lower leg. We also want to know what the calves are doing, so let's get these guidelines here. If you recall, this is 7.5 heads down. So the knees are 6.5. So I'm going to come up here, and from her head, I'll get 1 head total. And then I'll come down here to the knees, and I'll go 1 head below the knees to find 7.5. And from there, we can do 45-degree arrow heading this way and the opposite. And now we'll know what the calves are doing. Let's go ahead and get the top of the cylinders for the lower leg and the bottom. Remembering that the distance here at the top is going to be the same as her upper leg. Now for this one, what we're going to do is we want to emphasize this calf muscle coming out. So if you want, you can go ahead and do kind of a straight line heading towards it and a straight line heading back. If that helps for you to really see that that calf muscle popped out. Some designers you'll see they'll even leave a sharp corner on there, and that just becomes their style. For the inside calf, it's lower down here, so this is going to aim for the lower part before you do this sweetheart cutting in. Also remembering that the lower side inside is cutting in closer to the center line, and that is correct. So this is uneven on both sides here. Now for the legs, let's start doing some of the finishing touches. We can go ahead and start here at the shoe, and we'll work our way back up the leg. Let's do these really simple, basic high heel shoes. So again, if you divide the shoe in half, and then you move towards the inside, off center, towards the inside here, that's where her big toe is going to be. So the tip of the shoe will be here, off center. And then at this same level, the rest of the toes will angle all the way back out to there. So it should be asymmetrical. Let's do the same thing here. So this is heading for the tip of her toe. And then we come out to here. and all the other toes are now angling back out to there. Once you do this part of the shoe, this cupping part down, this is now back to just being centered. So if you find the middle of the shoe here, the middle of the shoe here, you're going to aim for half of the shoe comes down to there and the other half goes back up. Now that we have everything in place, we've been using like sharp edges and stuff. I'm going to switch to my number 2 pencil and I'm going to start drawing this with rounded edges. As well, the shoe will stick out a little bit beyond her skin. So what I'll do is I'll connect this over. This becomes her shoe. And everything's going to get rounded off. And again, that's just my style and my preference. Some people like having it sharp and edgy. And it also depends on your collection if you want your shoes to look sharp and edgy or soft and rounded. Something else I like to do is just a little V to show, hey, maybe there was kind of a little shine coming here off of the toe. Now usually you won't do any shading on a croquis. Down here on the shoes it's okay. So if we take a look here at her ankles, when we're looking at the outside ankle, it's just smooth. We're not really seeing any kind of a bump there. So you can go ahead and connect her foot out of her shoe and then just right up into this calf. And then for the inside ankle, remember this is up at 9. What you'll do is this calf here will come down and become this little bump for the inside ankle. So following the calf down, inside ankle. And then the rest of her foot will just connect right behind it. And it's very, very subtle. You don't want to get too crazy with drawing too many things to try and make some kind of an ankle bone. Go ahead and erase this extra information. Now for me, I like to have the top of the cylinder because this helps remind me if she was wearing like leggings or yoga pants or something that they would end there. I'm also noticing my leg here is way too thin. And then we need the guideline for 9 1/4 because if you were drawing an ankle length skirt, hem, or dress, it would end here at 9 1/4. If you like these legs, let's go ahead and move up into the knee area. So remember again, the outside of the knees, we're just going to do an inside curve, so concave. That'll connect right up with the outside calf. And back to the ankles. The inside of her knees, so the inside thigh will come down and become this little knee bone right here. So this will come down, knee bone. And then for the remainder of this inside lower leg, it'll just come up and go behind that knee bone. Ideally for the knee bone and everything, you don't want to draw too much. You don't want to emphasize it too much. And we can erase some of this extra information here. And that way it's easier for you to see it. Leave the outside edges of her thighs for now, because later on when we start drawing hands, we're going to do a lot of erasing in this area. So let's not darken those in just yet. Now that I have my legs in place, I'm going to come up and start to draw her arms. So what we'll do is I'm going to just follow basically the same thing I've done here. For me, drawing arms, I've always had trouble with it. And a lot of times what I need to do personally is I need to follow a photo. So I need a picture of a girl so I can follow what her arms are doing. The most important thing that I've learned is as soon as you start making an arm heading out into space, it looks more and more uncomfortable unless she's putting her hand on her hip. So for instance, when I bring this elbow out off of her waist, I don't want to go very far at all, especially because I just have her hand coming back to her hip. So on my girl, I'm going to even bring the elbow back into her waist even just a little bit more, because it's almost starting to look like it's sticking out too far. So follow with me the same thing here that I'm going to do right now. So take out your lightest pencil and sharpen that. We're going to start plotting out where this elbow is out here in space. As you know, her upper arm is 1.5 heads long, so that would be from the shoulder down to the rib cage. If you put this guideline in here at an arc, that's following along with what her elbow would do naturally, being 1.5 heads long. So once we have that in here, we can come and find her actual elbow joint just below that. Again, I want it to be closer to her waist than I did here, so I'll bring it down here a little more. And now that I look at where I've placed it, it's pretty much just dropping straight down with the plumb line. Let's go ahead and find the center of her armhole, and we're going to connect that to the center of this elbow joint. So then we know that both sides of the forearm are going to follow that parallel. Because remember, the forearm doesn't get thicker or thinner, it's just the same thickness the whole way. Again, this croquis we did here, the arms were a little bit thicker because the girl that we were referencing, she was a professional swimmer. So she herself kind of has thicker muscular arms. But we're going to go ahead and make our arms skinnier for this croquis. So come down in here, find the bottom, and decide about how wide you want your forearm to be, or her upper arm. Start aiming for the inside of the armhole here, and start aiming for the outside of the armhole here. And then just take a look at that, make sure you do like the thickness. The next one's going to be is, where is her wrist in space? Now if you notice here on this wrist, what I've done is her hand is actually not quite touching her thigh, because later on I'm going to draw clothes. So imagine if I drew a pair of pants, or if I drew a skirt or flowy dress, I actually want a little bit of space between her skin and her hand. So then when I draw that dress, I'll have it flow right under her hand, if that makes sense. So you can see her wrist here is a little bit off of her skin, not right on her skin. So we'll do the same thing over here. We're going to have the wrist somewhere over in this area. What we'll do is we'll just kind of guess if we're heading down this way the wrist is somewhere out over here. Oops. So find the center of her arm traveling down. Then we need to have the top of the cylinder for her forearm. Her forearm is one head total, so I can go from the rib cage to the full hip. This is one head. Come over here. Now I know how long her forearm is. Below that is going to be her wrist bone. And then you can see here I have her hand carving back towards her body. So it's coming at an angle back into here. So from the center of that wrist, heading back into here. Now that we have that angle, I can get the top of the cylinder here and the bottom of the cylinder where it would be 3/4 of a head. So come up here, top of the skull, tip of the nose. This is how long her hand is. And something else that I'll do also is, in this instance, I'll even make her hand just a little bit longer than it really should be. So even a little bit longer than 3/4 of a head. You can see on this hand it got a little bit stubby, short looking, even though that's correct. So here we'll just make this one a titch longer. So go ahead and do that. Now we want to take this hand and divide it up. So half of it is arc A, the next half arc B, the fingertips are out here at arc C, and that connects back to arc A or arc B. In this instance now we can come in and we can find what's the width of, what's 1/4 of a hand, so we can find the total of her wrist. And that'll help to determine how wide her wrist is, how wide the forearm is, and now we'll know what to aim for. So just double check that the width, 1/4 of the hand is the same as the wrist. So then again, here we can come over to the forearm. This is her wrist. And then the forearm itself. Remember that the outside of the forearm is going to be that plain heart shape. What we're aiming for here is the same as the width of her upper arm is the same right here. Boom, boom. And this will be the sweetheart shape. And then again, at her elbow. So this outside will just curve in, same as her waist. And then the inside edge, you're going to want to come out, hit a point, and come back, because that's going to be her elbow bone. Now we're ready to start drawing this hand. So take a look at this hand here.